Mashael AlDoy, Voice of Architecture 2023.
Introduction. Can you please introduce yourself and share a bit about your background in architecture and writing? What inspired you to participate in the Sensory Architecture 2023 essay competition?
Hello, my name is Mashael and I am from the Kingdom of Bahrain. I'm 23 years old and I've just graduated from the University of Bahrain in architecture. So basically my passion in architecture started when I was young. Both my parents are engineers, one is in electrical and the other is a computer engineer basically. So seeing their passion in that field made me more inspired to join a similar field to them, which is architecture, as I was very much interested in the creation of a building. So basically, this inspired the rest of my journey, delving more into the architecture field from writing it, because I saw how architecture was not just a objective or general based topic, as it has many topics, like psychology being one of them. So when talking about sensory architecture, you can see how it's focused on different physical and emotional effects. And looking at my paper, which was cognitive and physiological factors, you can see how architects and non-architects, which are two different groups I have to interview, looked at architecture in a different way, as each one of them has a different cognitive level and a different perspective when entering the space. So with that in mind, I started to delve into it deeper, which also inspired my graduation project. So during my reports for the methodologies, I had to write the psychology part of it. And once researching and basically analyzing and looking at Google Scholar articles, I've come across this competition, which was exciting because it was a way for me to showcase my work to the world.
Essay overview. Could you provide a brief summary of your winning essay? What were the key concepts or arguments you explored? What motivated you to choose this particular topic for your essay?
My paper basically discussed how modern architects focus on the vision aspect of a building. And that's not what architecture is all about. It's about the whole sensory experience using all the human senses, not just vision. And how they all work together to create the sensorial experience for a person. And as I've said, each person from different cognitive and physiological levels can experience it differently. From these two groups, like architects and non-architects, and for instance how each person has these sensory neurons found in our body, and they all work together to create this perception and comprehension of what the architect is displaying throughout the building. So these aesthetic features all work together based on these human senses. And what motivated me to deeply analyze this topic was basically in my senior year. I created this project called Al-Mbayat, which basically translates to a wooden and golden chest found in every Bahraini household, and it encompasses this like deeply personal items. So I created a form to encompass the Bahraini heritage and the Bahraini history, while creating these zones to help display each sense, like the vision, the auditory, and many more, and relating them to the cultural heritage.
Sensory architecture. How do you define sensory architecture? Why do you believe it is an important aspect of the built environment? How did you incorporate the sensory experience into your essay and highlight its significance in architecture design?
So sensory architecture is basically defined as a way for the architect to help engage with the people and have those people highlight their experience within each space of the structure. And it's showcased within entering a site, like a first impression. And when entering this space, a person first experiences the texture, the materials used, the lighting, the color schemes, and many other. So these all help with stimulating these human senses and creating this sensory architecture. Based on my paper, there are two select groups that are different in their way of experiencing this sensorial relationship between the spaces of the structure, which are the architects and non-architects. So I created interviews and surveys for them and showed them these two videos to see how their thought process is. For example, what I've seen is that an architect, when entering, they look at it from a more of an engineering point of view, like the slabs, the beams, the construction process. Whilst a non-architect looks at it from an aesthetic taste, like the colors and how it relates to their nostalgic experience or whatever they experienced in a past life. And that's basically how the sensory architecture process is, and why it's very significant or crucial for an architect and designer to imply or to create it in their process, and how it's important to take into consideration these occupants and visitors' experience.
Research and analysis. What research methods did you employ to gather information and support your arguments? Were there any significant challenges or interesting discoveries you encountered during your research process?
The research method I've chosen is a qualitative research method study, and it's basically on real-life context and observation. Using surveys and interviews, I've conducted these methods to observe how the architect and non-architect feels. It showed the actual thought process of when they looked at the two videos I've shown them, how they saw the architecture from their own point of view, from the materials I've previously mentioned, or the nostalgic feeling.
Impact and application. In your opinion, how can a focus on sensory architecture positively impact individuals and communities?
Sensory architecture can definitely be positive to a person or to a community. For example, for a person, when they enter, if it's created in a way to accommodate that person, their well-being or their health would be immensely improved. It would be a positive experience for them. From the materials used, either light-colored or dark-colored, it's basically different for each person. And looking at it from a community standpoint, it can either be respecting that site or bringing awareness to that sensory experience. And bringing that awareness can be positively looked at for neighboring houses, as the person creating that sensory experience will help the other person feel that sensory experience.
Future directions. Based on your research and insights, what do you envision as the future of sensory architecture? Are there any emerging trends or developments you find particularly exciting? How can architects and designers incorporate sensory considerations into their projects to create more immersive and meaningful experiences?
Based on my research and insights, I can see a great future for sensory architecture. From the research analysis I've done and going deep into some articles I've read, a lot of architects are diving into that sensory experience. However, it's not applicable in real life, except for some, like the Hazelwood School I've seen, where it's for the visually impaired people. When entering, they can sense the wood, the type of wood, from the tactile sense. They can touch the wood and feel the wood with their fingers throughout the whole space. It's displayed all throughout. So that's like a new trend that I found very interesting. However, I can see it's mostly being written as an article or an essay or a research paper, but I can definitely see great things happening in the future for the sensory experience, as I can see a lot of people are accommodating to an individual or a community. Whether they realize it or not, every space stimulates that human senses, and so they have to take into consideration the people occupying that space.
Personal reflection. How has participating in this competition and winning affected your perspective on sensory architecture and its importance in the field of architecture? Have you discovered any new passions or areas of interest through the process of researching and writing your essay?
Participating in this competition and having the honor to win has definitely affected my perspective on the sensory architecture. It had me and gave me the chance to broadcast my understanding of it and how it actually does create an impact on the architectural industry.
Advice for aspiring writers. What advice would you give to aspiring writers and researchers who are interested in exploring sensory architecture or entering similar competitions? Based on your experience, what are the key elements that make an essay stand out in a competition of this nature?
As an advice for aspiring writers, basically find something you're passionate about. Find something that you find enjoyable, and it makes the process more easy when writing it. Basically, architecture has been my passion since I was a kid, and writing it was easy because it was something I enjoyed writing about. And it's not just one topic, it's many topics delved into one another, and it happened to be psychology, the one that I'm interested in. And it was interesting to understand how two different professions working together can help create the best experience for a person. So and it was not just about writing a paper, it was actually conversing with others, because as I've said, the qualitative method, it was a real life observation. Creating these interviews and surveys was a way for me to connect with these people and actually see them. So it was a unique experience and an amazing one.
For latest architecture competitions, visit Archiol Competitions.